Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage the President and Chief Executive Officer of NV Energy, Michael Yackira.
Thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be here. This is quite an event and a great turnout for our first event of this kind. It's going to be an interesting dialogue about what is changing with respect to technology in our industry. And as a segue from the last panel, I thought it might be good to talk about an analogy. And the analogy is how we sell electricity today compared to the way gasoline is sold. The way we sell electricity today is like driving up to a gasoline station, going up to the pump, and seeing nothing on that pump but a nozzle. No price, no numbers of gallons, no transaction cost. And you fill up your car and you drive off the gas station and you don't even pay. And at the end of the month you get a bill. And then you wonder, how could you possibly have a $250 bill? And it's too late to take an action. The technology that we're going to be talking about today will transform, from my perspective, the way we sell electricity and the way we interact with our customers and the way they interact with us. It might not quite be the Jetsons, but it does remind me, I grew up in New York City, and it does remind me of something that was called the Carousel of Progress at the World's Fair in 1963 and 1964. That was General Electric. Barbara's, yeah, people are, yeah, I'm dating myself obviously, but I wasn't even a kid when that happened. But the key to that was, what has electricity done to change the way people live? And the value proposition of what electricity provides is really unknown. And I think that the technologies that we're talking about, that we euphemistically call smart grid and smart meter, is truly going to change the way we interact and the way our customers interact with us and how they consume electricity. Our discussion today is going to talk about partnerships between utilities and their technology counterparts. And as we know, across the United States, these partnerships are focused on easing the transition and making the transition more transparent for our customers and maximizing the benefits that our customers get from these new technologies. It's going to be a different kind of panel today. The panel focus at first will be on Oklahoma. We're going to hear from Pete Delaney, the Chairman, President, and CEO of OG&E Energy Corporation, and from Scott Lang, who's the Chairman, President, and CEO of Silver Springs Network. And then after that, we're going to hear from Ron Binz, the Chairman of the Colorado Commission, who will add his comments on how the future of in-house technologies will benefit our customers, and he can even talk about some of his own experiences in that respect. So the first part will be just Pete and Scott up here, and then we'll come back with Ron, so please join me in welcoming Pete Delaney and Scott Lang.
Good afternoon. I'm going to talk today about customer engagement, and I'm going to talk about customer engagement as it relates to the AMI, or Advanced Metering Infrastructure Deployment, that we're doing in Oklahoma. We are about 1 year into a 3-year physical deployment. We're actually deploying the hardware, but that work, laying the foundation, goes back to 2007 in order to get to the point we have today. One of our partners since 2007 actually has been Silver Spring Networks, and Scott Lang is with me here today. We've done this once before at a creativity conference of all places, so we're going to try it again. One of the things, what we're trying to do is provide some different perspectives. We're a 109-year-old utility using the technology that we have a startup, Silicon startup company providing the technology for us, but we're also going to provide perspective of some of our customers with a few videos that we have today. Scott?
Thank you, Pete. It's terrific to be here, and well done to the conference organizers for a great event and great turnout. The project with OG&E is really an important result of building a smarter grid. So when we think about smart grid, and we saw a lot of good analogies today and a lot of wonderful efforts, it's really about building a smarter grid. And when we have thought about that, being a networking company, we've thought about how do we connect devices that generate, consume, manage, or monitor the flow of power. All of these devices, of how to have them communicating with one another to enable utilities to cross a bridge that has never been crossed. And that is how they're actually sending signals back and forth to these devices, making them intelligent. And so with that, I'm going to bring Pete back up, and he's going to share some customer stories, and we look forward to sharing with you more about the technology and the benefits of it.
You know, I know there's a lot of press, and I think that some of the deployments that you hear about pushback from communities and customers, particularly as it relates to smart meters. All the deployments are not going that way. I think in our case, our surveys indicate we have really a high level of customer support and community support. And I'll talk a little bit about our pilots, our home area network pilots that we've completed. I can tell you that our customer satisfaction from those customers who have actually participated in our pilots are really off the charts positive and really demonstrates how it's going to change our relationship with our customers. I have a video we want to roll, which is Assistant Superintendent of Schools for Norman Public Schools. They were in our pilot, and hopefully we have a video of him being interviewed, and they actually saved $15,000 during the 4 months.
The learning curve is pretty quick, and if you just start looking at the data, you can make those decisions pretty immediate. And I think we need to compliment OG&E for that, because we need it to be simple. That's how you make quick decisions. And so that's the beauty, I think, of this program, is the quick decisions you can make. Like, oh my gosh, look, tomorrow, you know, during peak time, the charge is going to be this. How do we want to adjust our thermostats to meet that? I think it's very beneficial to be part of a pilot like this study, simply because in the big picture, how great is it to be part of something that might really change behavior of all people in a large scale throughout the state. I think that's wonderful. Plus, it's a great teaching tool for our students, you know, as we begin to really get involved in this and share this information with our students, the kinds of things we're doing as a district to impact not only the Norman Public School District, but to impact the community and the state. How great is that? That's a great teaching tool. So I think it's very important.
Reflecting really on how our customers have reacted to our deployment and our pilots, and I think it's noteworthy that when we started this in 2007, our #1 priority and objective for the AMI deployment was demand response. So we really had 4 elements to our approach to the deployment. The first part of that was we needed to really start with customer education, explain to our customers and communities the role that we hope they will play and the opportunities for them if they do play in that role. Secondly, we talked about we really needed a demand response approach that relied on voluntary participation of our customers as opposed to direct load control. Third, we said that as we deploy the hardware in the field, we need to be offering functionality to our customers so that they can see benefit and not wait till we get to the end of our 3 years. And then the fourth thing is that we said, you know, I think we really need to set a vision for our customers, actually, and for our own employees. And that vision would be something that would get them excited about what we're trying to do, get them to buy in on our value proposition. And in this case, our vision was a business goal. And in 2007, we said publicly that our goal was to not build another power plant until after the year 2020. We were looking at needed to build in 2015, 2016. And so that was the vision. That was the goal that went very public about. Scott?
Thanks, Pete. Well, it's always great to hear from happy customers. Since we've been working on this, I think we probably have close to 7 million homes now networked around the world, and networking tens and thousands of homes per day. There's a lot of challenges you come up against. I mean, the road to building a smarter grid is certainly challenging. We've learned a lot. We've learned a lot with our clients. Our clients have had a lot of experiences of how to do things right. And a couple of the things that are important takeaways, I think, from this project and what Pete and his team have done is the communication and the outreach piece was never underestimated. The programs to engage communities, to engage legislators, to engage local businesses and customers started before the program ever began. So people understood what this was about and took the mystery out of it. and then understood why we were doing this and what the benefits to them would ultimately be that we would be able to deliver on. And we're going to touch on some of those benefits that we've been able to unlock. And Pete, I'm sure he's a little modest, but he'll also hopefully talk about his customer satisfaction numbers, which are some of the best that we've seen anywhere in the world. The second part that we always focused on, that we knew we had to get right, is the importance of the platform and the network. If these devices, the dozens of different devices that are coming onto this network and to this platform, are not reachable consistently and reliably and in a secure fashion to give Pete and other utility customers around the world confidence that they were connected, we knew that the benefits ultimately could be much diminished. And so the power of that, to our opinion, and I believe that now is becoming a very global accepted standard, is the application of Internet Protocol standards in order to make this work. When we studied this problem, we listened a lot to our customers, a lot to the industry, and we heard some consistent messages. It had to be proven. So how do you bring a proven technology into a space that has not been innovated yet? It had to be secure. It had to be reliable. And so we looked at IP and what IP has done for other industries around the world. I often like to think of it a little bit, just starting off at the turn of the century, coming into the 1900s, the real power, the real killer app was the light bulb. And it did change everything about how we thought about going into the Industrial Revolution. And what really became the killer app, though, so to speak, was the wall socket. The wall socket enabled millions and millions of devices to access this electricity all around the world. And then when we think about what happened as we turned just 20 years ago or so, we saw the invention of the internet. The internet was created initially for email. But look at what's happened with that platform in place. It has enabled trillions of dollars of new commerce to come to the market. Google and Yahoo and Amazon and eBay and Twitter and Facebook, all things that we could have never imagined. And so what we're really building with a smart grid is a platform that can offer the abilities for utilities to cross this bridge with their customers and bring on new applications and new services. And what a great panel that was just up here talking about electric vehicles. And that the concern is around the distribution grid, is about these devices intelligently communicating with each other to ensure we're using power in more and more demand at peak. And so it's an exciting part of it. So two things, the customer engagement and the critical nature of the platform is really what's made this project successful. And Pete, to come back up now and talk a little bit about those benefits.
I want to start, I talked about those four elements of our approach, and we'll probably start in reverse order and talk about the 2020 plan that I talked about, is that vision that we had. And you know, we're very public about that announcement in the community and the company, really driving the message that we cannot approach the problems today with the way we approached things in the past. We just wasn't going to cut it for us. And so what we did was we had a TV, TV media. I thought it was a very good one. I wish we had time to show it. We recruited the governor, recruited the mayors. We had university presidents. We had customers, and we had, I think the best part of this is we had the lead singer of the Flaming Lips, which Wayne Coyne, who, if you know the Flaming Lips, it was, we had to be careful with the lyrics. And we actually did pay to use the Ya-Ya song. And it was really engaging, and the secret is that Wayne's mother-in-law works for us. So that's how we got that done. But it was a very popular, and it really, I think, addressed all generations. And so that what we found was in our surveys of that 2020 plan, that what we talked to them about was, look, we're going to empower you with these tools. And if you use these tools, what it's going to do is it's going to enable us to eliminate the need for a power plant. And so we say, we supply, you apply. They really got that. value proposition, and we really found that empowered them and really got excited about what was that opportunity and that was going to come for them. So I think that was the key part of the customer engagement that we have. The next part on deployment, talk a little bit about the functionality that we have. I said that we are, 1 year, we have about 230,000 meters deployed as part of 800,000 total system-wide rollout by the end of 12. So what we can do within a week or so after that smart meters installed, we are, of course, remote billing. We are remote connecting and disconnecting. Of course, that's not the participative engagement we're looking for. But what it does is enables us to deliver $23 million of savings, which we've guaranteed by the end of 2012, so it lowers the cost of deployment. Of course, we will know people are out now, so they don't have to call anymore. We will know when they're out of power, and so it will help us with problem resolution, and it'll make for a faster time in power restoration. Second thing is again, after a couple of days, you're getting your meter in, you can get on the website. You can look at your consumption hourly. You can compare it to an efficient home of your size, square footage, age. You can compare it to the average of energy consumption for homes in your zip code, and there's a lot of other information in there. You can look at your CO2 production and things of that nature. So all 230,000 customers have it, and we're installing 1,000 a day of these smart meters. We are looking at a prepay pilot, for example, and we hope to roll that out. We think that's really going to be attractive and give a lot of value to our lower income customers. Just the point being is that now we're going to be looking at continuing to roll out products over this platform, and you just heard about the electric car. You can see that also something in terms of integrating that those vehicles would be one thing we can do with this technology or platform. I talked about our home area network pilots. We have a 6,000 customer pilot. You saw one customer who participated in the first part we completed last summer, which we were shooting real-time, communicating real-time prices, variable peak prices, and time of use prices to our customer groups. And then the last part of this, what we've been doing the last year, is also distribution automation with automatic reclosers and capacitor controls. Again, that's not a direct interface and functionality with our customers, but they will see improved reliability and they will see lower costs as we get more efficiencies out of our system. So again, that's part of the value proposition. So we probably, in terms of, and then of course you have to put in the IT infrastructure to do all this and make everything work, and all the new distribution management systems and things that you have to put in. So we probably have one of the more holistic deployments going on, and at this point it's on budget and on time, and we hope to continue that. I think that a real important part is sharing the studies, the results of our home area, the home area network pilot. And we had 3,000 customers, 600 in a control group. We had a best bill guarantee because it's voluntary. If you didn't save money, we'd write you a check. We had to write 2% of our customers' checks. Everybody else saved money. Over a 4-month period, residential was around $100, $125. Small commercials, $300, $325, around there. The prices give you an example of the type of pricing that they saw. Was off-peak was 4.5 cents under variable peak pricing, and on-peak hours of 2 to 7 were 46 cents. And I guess what the results that were very encouraging to us, if the math that on terms of us delaying that power plan, if we can get 20% of our customers to participate in a demand response program, and if each participant would reduce their consumption by 1.3 kilowatts during that time, we can again meet our goal of no new power plant until 2020. And what we saw again, and we had different technologies in the home, but the most effective technology seemed to be the programmable thermostat. And in the high income category, they dropped their energy consumption at the peak hour, which was 3 p.m., by 57%. And that was 1.9 kilowatts. Now, it decayed pretty quickly after that, But again, of all the groups, and you see the potential there, met our expectations. We do have there's another video from a small business owner I'd like to show real quickly, who also, I think, participated and realized some savings.
We've used the Smart Study programmable thermostat here in our business. We've also used the IHD, and it reminds us every time we walk by it exactly what our bill is going to look like. There's been a time or two that I've been able to go on the internet and just kind of see how things were tracking there as well, and to be able to see it. And again, there's a difference between having an idea of it and it being a tangible, something written on a piece of paper that tells you this is what you're spending. And I think that adds to this for people, because then no one's responsible for their utility costs but themselves at that point. If they're not utilizing it properly or being as effective as they can with where they have their thermostat set, that's their own fault. And if they can know those things, if they see exactly what it's going to be, they've got a better ability to manage it.
So I think you can see we're very encouraged by those results. They line up well with what our assumptions are. Want to be clear that, again, we have another study that we're going to do this summer with another 3,000, so we can see the sustainability of those types of behaviors for the second summer in a row and compare them to new participants in. But I got an email talking about this with our head of marketing, and to quote her, I think she said, captured the best. The technology is really cool and it's very interesting, but customer engagement is what it's all about, and we certainly agree with that.
Good, thank you, Pete. The diversity of the kinds of devices and the way we've gotten to customers has been really a great learning here, from phone to text to in-home displays to programmable thermostats to paper, and all of those mechanisms to make it easy and intuitive for people to react in a way to deliver these terrific results. If we extrapolate the results that we've seen in Oklahoma, that would lead to 150 to 200 fewer peaker plants that need to be built. So when we bring this up and we think about the results that we've seen, it's a big result in one state. And those results are available. The success stories to get out are important. This is becoming a global imperative. In our travels around the world, the other countries are not slowing down. They're not going to wait, and they're moving very quickly. It is imperative that we show leadership, we continue to unlock these benefits, and reach results on even a broader basis of what we're starting to learn with this project here. And in closing, whether you're well under your way in a deployment, or you're considering a deployment, the customer outreach, the customer communication, get them involved from early on, and really make sure the underlying platform and that communications platform is important, because there's a lot of different devices that are going to come out of it, and it's hard to predict where that is. So it's important to build the most flexible, proven platform that you possibly can today. So with that, we're going to bring Michael back up and introduce the next speaker. Thank you.
Thanks, Scott and Pete. We can learn a lot from what happened with OG&E, certainly, and there's a lot of education to do. There's no doubt about that. Ron Binz, as I mentioned, a very technically savvy commissioner. He claims that he might not be the most technically savvy, but I think he might be. A guy who installed his own smart meter and all the innards inside his house to know what device is controlling what energy. So I'm sure we're going to enjoy hearing from Ron Binz.
Thank you very much. When this conference was being put together, I just sort of imagined the initial, big blocks of what we were going to do. And when it came to my spot, it was cue the state regulator for a cold shower on everything that has preceded him. I'm going to try not to do that. The regulatory decisions on smart grid are being talked about like Civil War battles. There was the Maryland decision, there was the Colorado decision, and so forth. It's the case that state regulators will have a lot to say about this, and I'd like to give you a realistic view, I think, of where they are, where they can be, and some of the things that are necessary for them. And before turning to that, I'd like to just note that much like the stages of grief, you know all the stages of grief, right? There's been stages of smart grid. We sort of started with magic, curiosity, moved very quickly to hype. Then we had a sort of a crash. Moving to reality right now, I think. This conference is a good example of that. And eventually we get to nirvana. It was mentioned that I have my own system in my house. As a state commissioner, I wanted to find out what the customer experience was going to be like with in-home devices. And so I went to the utility. I'm not in a smart grid enabled neighborhood. I have an AMR meter on my house. And I wanted to get an in-home device, so I needed a meter which could talk to my in-home network, but also still be backwardly compatible with the utility's AMR truck reads. So I basically, me and the utility found a system. I told them that I did not want to be subsidized on this. I'm their regulator, I need to look good and all this. I also talked to Tendril about selling me a tree system, the Tendril in-home system. And I said, you know, you guys are in the space. I'm a regulator. I don't want any special deals. So both of them solved it in the same way. They overcharged me for what I ended up getting. So I'm in good shape. Literally, sitting here from my laptop, I just switched off my cable TV system. I forgot to turn it off before leaving home for 4 days, and I just did that remotely. Now that's not a big deal. It's about a 50-watt draw on my utility bill, so utility instantaneous load. So it's not big, but you know, in the space of 768 hours in a month times 50 watts, whatever, 3.5 kilowatt hours. So you know, 35, 40 cents. Why waste the money, right? So maybe I'm a little more savvy than a lot of regulators are. You will probably not find a lot of them. One of them is here. Paul, where are you? Paul, I can't quite see him. Okay. From the Ohio Commission, working very closely with the NIST group on standards. And there are some of us who are sort of in that bleeding edge. But as a general matter, I think state regulators are very supportive of this. The pushback has come when utility companies come in and file a smart grid case just like every other rate case they've ever filed. You know, this is what it's going to cost, pay me now or pay me later, sort of a thing. Rather than selling, I think, the regulators themselves on the promise that this actually does hold. So I'm very bullish on smart grid. In Colorado, we're doing a couple things to try and move this along. I'm the hearing commissioner privacy docket, in which we want to get off the table the remaining privacy issues about the security and the use of smart grid data and the terms under which it's exchanged with third-party providers and some second-party providers. I'm also interested in a market access docket we'll be undertaking pretty soon to figure out exactly what the utility's obligation is to set up a competitive platform for the use of that data. I think that's very important. It's one thing to show smart grid when there is a pairing of the utility and a single provider or a single company. That's one thing. But when you have Google and Microsoft and Tendril and GridPoint and all of the others knocking on the utility's door saying, we want to do this, and then you've got people you've never even thought of yet also doing that, we're going to have some rules of the road. I think it's very important for the regulators to get that straight. I want to say just a couple things about Smart Grid City in Boulder. It followed the magic, curiosity, hype, crash, reality, nirvana scenario. We're probably in about reality right now. We're just past the crash. Smart Grid City was one of the first major projects. It was featured on Good Morning America probably 3 years ago. as the future of the electric system, and Xcel Energy and all of its partners in Boulder were basking in the glow. The reality turned out to be different, as you all know from reading all the trade press. The cost overruns were 3x, and Xcel came to the Commission for cost recovery on that. We were not real pleased with the fact that there were the cost overruns, but we might have been fine had there been some benefit overruns, and there weren't any. In fact, we had the view that Smart Grid City was not being made able to live up to its promise, and so we actually denied part of the cost recovery to the utility unless and until they come back and demonstrate that this has a coherent future and that they have a coherent plan for investing in home devices and other sorts of things. We're doing a pricing pilot in Boulder. By the way, Boulder is a curious site for a smart grid experiment. I don't know how many of you have been to Boulder. Boulder, among other things, has the lowest body mass index in the country, okay? These are runners and climbers and yoga instructors and all kinds of things like that. There's basically, it's a very special population. And my view has always been if smart grid don't work in Boulder, it's not going to work anywhere. So we're very interested in seeing smart grid in Boulder be able to live up to its initial, at least a fraction of its initial hype. And in the words of our order, we've asked the utility to reboot Smart Grid City. The concept being that all the hardware is there, it was the software systems which aren't working as we hoped they would be. So we fully expect Boulder to return to its status as the shining city on the hill at some point with a smart grid system there. I don't have a lot more to say in this point. I know there's going to be questions and answers, and I look forward to all of those. It's clear to me that the smart grid on the customer side of the meter needs a killer app. That's possibly going to be the electric vehicle, although I'm not completely convinced of that. It turns out the delta, now if your rates are 46 cents versus 4, I will agree that charging off peak makes a lot of sense. But there's very few utilities who will have that large a disparity between peak and on-peak. And the savings for charging off peak really aren't that large compared to the capital investment of the vehicle. They're real, but I'm a little bit unconvinced that we're going to do that through pricing alone. Xcel Energy is actually looking at something for smart vehicle charging similar to what they're doing with air conditioning. It's an interruptible offer that customers are subscribing to in droves in Colorado. There are 150,000 customers in the meters, not people, meters, in the Denver metro area that are subscribing to interruptible air conditioning service. Basically, you get 25 or I think it's 40 bucks a season as a rebate for allowing your AC to be able to be interrupted. You get about a kilowatt per customer, and so that's more or less 150 megawatts of interruptible, or DR, if you will, demand response type capacity that's there. I think Xcel is thinking that the same kind of system may be suitable for electric charging. So if you send out a RF signal to the charging network, you pull those vehicles off. Now that's not quite the full benefit because we do like the notion of an energy sink during the nighttime to soak up a lot of that wind generation. My last point is that I think that state regulators also are going to be very interested in the ability of smart vehicles and the systems in homes that control those to affect climate and other environmental issues. You heard that from John Wellinghoff. You'll hear that from lots of regulators. In order to do that, we also have to make sure that the source of the generation is relatively clean. Now, it turns out that 100% coal generation is still cleaner using that electricity to run an automobile than is burning gasoline in the same vehicle. So we come out ahead immediately. But cleaning up that generation supply and going to an environmentally more friendly portfolio is going to be part of what I think you're going to see a lot of regulators look more seriously at, especially as we get new energy load from electric vehicles. So I look forward to your questions. I want to thank, as everyone else has, the Edison Foundation for putting this on. Lisa Wood, you did a great job in doing this. I hope I haven't disappointed. This wasn't the cold shower that perhaps you thought I would give, but I think we do all now are best served if we sort of look with some reality, with some understanding of what consumer response to this is really going to be, as opposed to what the planners of the smart grid at the early stages said would be the case. I used to go to conferences. I knew everybody at the conference. I now go to smart grid conferences. I know about 10% of the people. The rest of them are money guys, right? All looking for the deal here. And you go to these meetings, you know what I'm talking about. You see a lot of people you just never knew they had an interest in the electric utility industry. And it always reminded me of the Tom Wolfe Bonfire of the Vanities line, the sound of young men banged for money, which is what I think a lot of the smart grid hype was at one point. But we're settling down into an age of reality, and I, for one, look forward to the future that is to come. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ron. Well, that was a dose of reality, despite what you said. I think that was really good. Teed up the Q&A session. Let me start by asking a question related to what we heard before from Bill Taylor, and that is the concept of vujade. Do we see the opportunity of technological change driving something fundamentally different in our industry, or is it going to be just a bell and a whistle, and very few people are going to take advantage of it? Want to start with you, Pete?
Sure. No, I think that what we're seeing, how we engage with our customer totally, and I think it was talked about, and Tony talked about this, the panel, it really changes the whole nature of your relationship with your customer. As you talked about the analogy at the gas station, it's not that one, you don't get a bill post, and it's a very non-active, not a lot of heat in that relationship unless they don't like their bill. But now you've got a really engaged customer. You've got a two-way conversation, and you've given them options. Our belief is you price it out. You let them choose whether they want savings, whether they want comfort. We're all out the customer, letting them choose how they want to proceed, whether they want to try to go on a lowering emissions path and maximize that, maximize savings, because they may not be the same thing. And so it changes our fundamental relationship with the customer. And so we see that any industry that gets into digitizing its information, I think there's a long history of what happens to those industries. You see dramatic change and transformation.
Ron, something to add?
I think the utilities are going to see a lot of intermediation by other players in their traditional business. I don't know what Google Power Meter is going to grow into. Google doesn't know. We heard a presentation recently from Mike Terrell from Google, and he said they created this, but they really don't know what they want to do with it. But it's pretty easy to imagine, because people really don't understand the organization of this industry, is beginning to think of Google as your electric provider, when they have nothing to do with the provision of electricity, of course, but in a software way, they've intermediated the relationship between the customer and the utility. I know this is on a lot of utilities' minds. I know they're very concerned about that, and I don't know where that's going to end up. And I don't want to pick on Google, because all of the other home area network providers, all of the energy service company providers, even in states where you don't have retail competition, are, I think, going to be attracted to that space.
Scott?
I do believe that will be the case of change for I think, two reasons. I think number one is the number of, to your point about the dollars, the invested dollars coming into this space has truly been enormous. We all saw in the beginning of clean tech, I don't know, 10 years ago or so, it was around supply side, it was around more generation, and it was around solar and wind and bios, and how do we generate more cleaner power and get off the use of fossil fuels. In the last several years, we've seen those billions of dollars flow in on the other side of the supply chain, on the demand side. And the number of new companies that are starting to come into this space are getting well-funded, very creative, a lot of smart people coming into it. And those technologies are going to become available to utilities over the next 3 to 5 years. And I think that is going to continue to drive innovation, continue to drive the analytics that we've been able to, work on with Pete and deliver this customer experience that's different. So the dollars, I think, are there, and they've been pinned up, and they're significant. The second reason that I believe it is going to drive change is our next generation. I have 4 daughters. My oldest just started college this past year. And one of the big reasons she went to the college she went to is they have the sustainability, and they're recruiting people about how we use technology to build a smarter planet. And they've grown up with these devices. And when we talk with them about what we may do and what's available, they respond by saying, "You mean, really? You mean that's where it is today?" And so I think the next generation of kids coming in that have grown up with a completely different technology than I grew up with, than many of us grew up with, are going to be thinking about ways of how we make the world a smarter place, how we make it more convenient, how we make it more efficient, and how we get more use out of the power we already generate.
They call them digital natives, people who have known nothing but the digitization of information.
Right.
And they're a different breed.
Yep.
That's right. Pete, you talked about options that you're offering, and I know at NV Energy during our smart grid trials, we're starting a dynamic pricing trial to see what reaction we get from our customers. Do you see sometime down the road, and this is a question from the audience, a little bit maneuvered, do you see the end result being a default that people will be going on dynamic pricing, or do you see options being offered consistently over long periods of time?
Well, I'd just like to say that we are learning a lot every day, and because no one's been down this road before, as you know. And so I think in situations like this, what we think today is probably going to be a lot different 60 days from now, and that may be a lot different than 90 days from now. Got a couple people in the audience who are working on our company, and they probably agree with me on that because of the learning curve so steep on this. But we're right now just trying to get 20% of our customer base. And the Department of Energy, when they looked at our proposal, they thought that was too high. They thought that 10%, I think, was the feedback we got from an assumption. We're still holding at 20. We think we can do that because of the engagement we're getting. But to answer your question, I think then that's 20% is going to, and you will have a standard rate. Encouraging thing that I didn't say is that in the savings, the high-income group was number 1, the low-income group was number 2, and the middle group was number 3. So it was really exciting to see that the low-income category, they really participated and saved money. So, but I think it won't be we don't see it as the standard offering at this point.
Since you're in different jurisdictions, maybe I'll throw the question to Ron and ask whether as a commissioner you can see that being default or offering options being the steady state.
Well, the only reason people switch is not the only reason. The main reason people switch is what's known as adverse selection. You're basically helping yourself out, even if it makes the entire system not necessarily as profitable or whatever. So that's a problem. And traditionally, time of use rates, they've been offered in Colorado for a long time, and no one takes them. So my guess is that eventually we'll get to a system where they'll be mandated. I don't think we're going to have my prediction for the intermediate term is we probably will not have mandated real-time pricing, but more likely time of use block pricing with critical peak pricing in it. To me, that seems to touch all of the areas that are necessary. Providing an off-peak nighttime attractive rate for such things as vehicle charging, providing the on-peak, average on-peak, not the needle peak, the average on-peak for most of the rest of the time, and then for those periods where you either want to interrupt use demand response or send out a 46-cent signal, that would be the component. I can imagine eventually that becoming, I'll use the term mandatory. I don't think that people will elect into that at a rate that's fast enough to actually make it helpful.
Scott, let me ask you a question about applications. Ron has done some of his own applications inside his home. Do you see that being the next natural evolution of what a smart home is going to be?
I do. I think the number of applications and the software and sophistication of the software is becoming a big part of the effort. And you know, with Pete and many of our other clients, we're getting them around the table saying, how do we actually help you now monetize and get even more use out of this platform that we've put in place, learning from best practices from one utility to another utility. And so there's, you know, the customer portal and being able to get to many devices and seeing the results that Pete shared is a big piece of that. Distribution automation also came up today. We've been working extensively on DA software and applications, and I think the industry is moving in this direction very aggressively of volt and VAR optimization. Right now, you try to get to that perfect 240 watts delivered all the way to the endpoint, and in order to do that, you have to keep piling a lot on to make sure that's there. But there's a lot of sags and swells in between. Mm-hmm. And when we've implemented the right technology and the right communication systems across a service territory, we can help a utility pinpoint where those losses and where those inefficiencies are occurring, and they're very large percentage savings for utilities. So I think, you know, this entire last mile on the distribution side has really not seen significant innovation for a long time, and there's a lot of devices, millions and millions of devices around distribution automation devices, around gas meters, water meters, electric meters, the in-home devices. And I do think the application side is going to be really interesting to watch over the next several years of how we unlock those benefits of being connected to them.
Let me take a little different step here and go back to something that Ron talked about, and that's disintermediation with customers with respect to apps. Pete, have you had a lot of discussion about there, or things actually you can talk about? Maybe strategically you don't want to talk about some of them, but is it a concern?
Well, on the app side, we looked at app, and we will have an app, but we want to make sure we have an app that does something, and the app have to really engage the customer, and so we were rolling those out. We talk about third parties. We have over 50 probably contractors, technology companies, service companies working with us, and as Scott said, there's more and more technology coming in. We will be embracing that technology and their ideas to help us achieve what we're trying to achieve, which is, again, right now we're focused on the demand response. And so, and that's our focus. It's a very complex undertaking. We are talking about, cybersecurity concerns, maintaining reliabilities. These are serious concerns, that we've got to do right. And so, we haven't had the luxury that much to think about it. I think it's going to come down to who the customer trusts. I mean, from our survey, we did a survey in March of 10 and November of 10. It was part of our public education. And 88% of our customers either agreed or strongly agreed that OG&E was trying to help them use their energy more efficiently. We've had people come up to us and say, I'm getting these calls about solar, but when's OG&E going to come out with solar? And so in our case, we have built up a high level of trust, and I think they'll continue to look for us to help them solve their problems. But beyond that, we haven't really, we're still figuring it out. Again, the learning curve is very steep.
Anything to add from Ron or Scott on that?
Well, I think that the utilities are going to have the utilities and their regulators are going to have a complicated situation when the utility decides itself that it wants to be an ESCO in its own market. I predict that that's going to happen, that the pipes side of the house, the delivery side of the house will be one thing, but because of pressure to open the platform, I think you may end up seeing utilities get back in through an unregulated subsidiary. That's my prediction. We saw something very similar to that in the telecom area. If anybody's been through the telecom wars, you know that that's exactly what divestiture was all about. Then it was this very uninteresting app called long distance. But eventually it's become lots of other things. So I think we're going to see a parallel discussion in that regard. I haven't mentioned one other thing I want to talk about, and that's the integration of distributed generation by the use of smart home networks. I think that's going to be that will be in some parts of the space a killer app. We're seeing right now clusters. You get panels on one roof, and everybody in the neighborhood feels the need to keep up with the Joneses, and so you get a cluster of solar. That creates these mini networks that you have to deal with in some sense, and you really can't do it with the intelligence that's in the network right now. So that one I wanted to weave in earlier. And I also mentioned earlier, one thing I don't want to let drop, the necessity for standards in this area to me is very high. This is before the FERC right now. I mentioned earlier Paul Centinela, who's been working on this with George Allen at NIST. That's going to become very important because you want everything to be plug and play. If it's not, we're going to have a big problem. I don't think we're headed for a problem right now, but we don't want to take our eyes off that ball, because for this, one hiccup would be to have, two parallel systems that customers, or 3 or 4 parallel systems customers have to keep up with. You want it to be. You don't want it to be where Windows 3.1 was, where you had to find drivers for everything you did, right? You want a plug-and-play system.
Good observation. Let me go to a question from the audience, and I'll add one piece to it. It says, what are you doing to engage regulators, legislators, and I'll add the media to smart grid discussion and education? Pete?
Well, we talk about our public education, our TV, media, demonstrations. Probably the most interesting thing is that the regulators, the staff, some of them have, since we got 230,000 smart meters, they have smart meters. And one of these individuals, his usage kept spiking at 2 a.m. in the morning. And so he was the commission staff, and it bothered him so much, one night he stayed up all night. And found out that his hot tub was some osmosis process, and was peaking him up at 2 a.m. So that right there, they are really engaged at the regulatory commission and the staff, and watch their and they're very intrigued with this. So they're seeing the benefits and the opportunities of when you start introducing price transparency, the impact it has on you. And I can look at my house, and I'm starting to question things, and the legislatures, our state, they're tracking it. There's a data privacy bill that's in the legislators were concerned about, that came out of the legislature, that we worked with them on because they wanted to be concerned about data security. But that's what we're doing.
Ron, maybe you can't answer this question in reverse. But if you feel comfortable answering it, do you feel
I'm completely comfortable.
Do you feel like the companies have done a good job in explaining to you what's going on?
No, they haven't. Here I think I'm going to speak, actually, I hope to speak for a lot of regulators, not Colorado, and I'm not talking about Excel. I think that among regulators you will find some who really get it, but a lot who don't, and it's through no fault of their own in some sense. This is a new way of thinking about something which we've all grown up with. And I think more effort needs to be put into it. I would like to see a lot more. Legislators as well. And I think we need to be really careful that we don't push the customer side of the meter applications faster than we ought to. You can't hang smart grid on that. You've got to hang it, to me, my way of thinking, for the utility side of the meter things right now. Boulder is getting all kinds of good results with voltage send out. They're figuring that they sent out way too much previously in order to keep that tolerance at the end of the circuit. They've avoided outages. They've cut down on customer complaints. Lots of good stuff like that. That, to me, is the sales job that needs to be done to sort of get us off dead center on this. And the inside the home applications is a totally different animal, in my view, and needs to be approached differently.
Well, Scott, Ron, Pete, appreciate your participation. This has been a lot of fun. I think we have a lot to learn going forward, but you've helped a lot. Thanks very much.